Morning inched over the prairie like someone lighting lamps down a long hallway, one window, then the next, then the soft gold laid across the short grass and the split-rail fence. Lark Avery, hat brim low, stepped from her porch with a mug steaming between both hands and the quiet that comes from sleeping near animals who trust you. The air had an old cotton smell. Dew clung to spider silk like tiny beads, and from the far pasture came the slow punctuation of a windmill that had learned patience from thirst. She meant to mend a gate, not meet anything new. The bay mare at the corral lifted her head and blew softly, a question shaped like breath. Beyond the tack room, in the half-dark of the barn's middle aisle, Lark heard a sound that wasn't one of hers, thin, high, irregular. A whicker, small as a whisper. She set down the mug without looking. Boots on, packed dirt, hand on the post, eyes letting the dusk inside settle. There, in the second stall, stood a foal, the color of toast and honey, legs too long for its sense of balance, ears flicking like moths at a lamp. Not born here, arrived. The halter was a size too big, lilac rope frayed from a gentle hand and hard miles. Tied to the cheekpiece, a scrap of folded paper, darkened by sweat and travel, knotted with care and haste together. The foal's sides moved like bellows learning the job. Its big eyes held the kind of fear that hasn't decided whether to bolt or lean in. Lark let her breath go slow, softened her shoulders, made her voice a path. Easy little comet. She slipped into the stall sideways. A stranger practicing how to be a friend. She didn't touch first. She let the foal smell who she was: hay, leather, soap, last night's coffee. The animal's nostrils quivered. Then a velvet muzzle bumped her sleeve. Lark smiled without showing teeth. You picked a good barn to be lost in. She fingered the note, untied the knot, and eased the paper free. The handwriting inside had been made on a wagon seat or a kitchen table with a baby crying in another room steady enough to be read by someone in a hurry. Please keep her safe. She's worth more than money. I had no more road. Under the line, a name. Mara Keene. Lark knew the name the way small towns know each other through brandings, church socials, the time the creek rose, and everyone showed up with buckets. Mara had married a man with good land and bad temper on the East Flats. Folks said life there ran on fences and orders. They'd lost a colt that spring, something quiet and wrong about it, and since then, Mara hadn't been seen as often in town. Lark folded the paper along its old crease, put it in her breast pocket, and listened to what it didn't say. The foal nosed at the empty feed tub as if manners might conjure oats. Lark fetched warm water and a little mash, let hungry meet kindness halfway. She worked a hand down the filly's neck, found the pulse alive and quick, skin warm under a dust film, no wounds, just the story of distance. The mare in Lark's paddock, Pepper, watched from over the stall door, ears forward, head tilted with the alert judgment of a matron. You're not her mama, Lark told Pepper, but maybe you'll loan her the idea of one. She set a small pen in the south lot, bringing Pepper and the foal out together, close enough for comfort, far enough for care. The sun climbed, warming the boards, making the dust smell like memory. Lark filled the water trough, then sat on the rail and let her mind walk the note again. Worth more than money, a phrase with edges. Worth more than a dowry, more than a man's pride. Foals aren't born with secrets, but people tie secrets to them and hope the world won't look too closely at either. She would look. She always had. At noon, she saddled up, tied a small bag with paste and bandage and the note tucked safe, and rode for the East Flats, where the Keene place sat like a square note on a long line. Pepper called after them once, a mothering sound. The little bay comet answered with a pierce of longing Lark felt in her teeth. I'll be back by night, she promised. The road carried the day's heat, the kind that rises in shimmer and lies about water. Meadowlarks kept the score, stitching sound through grass bent to the wind's letter. The Keene gate hung open, chain sagging, A wagon sat by the pump, one wheel sunk where the earth remembered yesterday's rain. The porch held the shape of a life packed in pieces, trunk half full, a quilt folded inside out, a tin cup that had forgotten where to land. Lark swung down and let the quiet speak. Flies gathered at the corner of a broken pane. In the kitchen, a chair leaned against the wall like a tired man. "Mara?" Lark called. The word didn't go far. In the bedroom, she found a Bible on the dresser, pressed with a blue wildflower. On the front flyleaf, in that same careful hand, "Elowen, if we have a girl, for wind and roots both." Lark ran her thumb along the stem of the pressed bloom and thought about names you write before lives arrive to wear them. A scrape on the floor by the bed showed where a trunk had been dragged. A muddy print on the sill said the window had become a door when the front one felt like a threat. Lark went back outside, scanned the yard, then saw where wagon tracks doubled back, light load gone heavy with decision. She followed on Sparrow, the tracks angling toward the cottonwoods that marked the shallow ford. Not far beyond, a scatter of hay showed where someone had stopped in hurry and hope. On the far side of the low rise, she found them. Mara Keene, skirt torn, breath coming like someone who'd run, not for exercise but for life. Beside her, a rope halter, cut clean, the other half still tied around a rock. When Mara saw Lark, she stiffened, then sagged into the relief of being recognized by someone who isn't a threat. "Did she find you?" she asked. "She did," Lark said. "In my barn like a small miracle with long legs." Mara laughed once, the sound breaking at the edges. "I tied the note 3 times in case my hands forgot how." She wiped her face with a sleeve and left a clean line through dust and worry. "He would have sold her for the price of a new fence. Said feelings don't feed a ranch." Lark dismounted, gave Mara a canteen, waited. Sometimes kindness needs a porch to sit on before the story arrives. Here, the porch was shade and a person who listens. Mara told it plain. Her husband, Owen Keene, had gambled his patience away with card men who brought opportunity tucked in their boots. Debts grew like goat heads, small, sharp, everywhere. When a buyer offered cash for stock, Owen agreed before asking which animals counted as coin. The filly had been Mara's project since a winter storm near took her mama. "She knows my voice," Mara said softly. "Knows the hem of my skirt when the wind plays with it." The buyer planned to haul the filly to a breaking string notorious for speed and scars both. "So I walked her at night," Mara continued. 1 mile, then 2, keeping off the road. Owen's men rode north for fence posts. Yesterday, I had till sundown, tied her note, kissed her star, pointed her toward kindness I prayed had not moved in the last year. She looked at Lark with a tired bravery. Did I sin? Stealing what a paper says is his? "Not everything a paper calls true deserves the word," Lark said. "You put a child where a child could grow." Mara's mouth trembled, then found itself again. "He'll come for her. He'll come for her. He'll try," Lark said, "and let the rest hang like a curtain that can be drawn when needed. I'll keep her safe for now, but you'll need safe too." Mara's eyes slid to the torn rope, then to the road that divides choosing from consequences. "My sister in Silt Ridge. She'd take me for a time. Then we'll take you both as far as the fork," Lark said. "Sparrow can carry double for a mile. It won't be the harshest thing she's done." Mara shook her head. "I can walk," Lark nodded. "Then we'll walk together." They reached the Keene place at dusk. Lark helped Mara gather what dignity fits in a satchel, a framed tintype of a little boy long gone to fever, a letter folded till its corners learned roundness, a dress that remembered Sundays. On the porch, the wind paused long enough to be counted, then moved on. "He won't be back tonight," Mara said, as if promising the house as much as herself. "He rides long when he's angry." Anger loves Miles, Lark said, because Miles can't talk back. They left the gate as they found it open to whatever tomorrow decided. Back at Lark's ranch, Pepper met the foal with a low, mother sound, and the filly stepped forward like a question that has just discovered its answer. Mara stood at the fence, hands on the top rail, shoulders slumping the way shoulders do when they remember how to rest. I named her Ember, she said, because she carries fire and doesn't know it yet. Ember, Lark repeated, letting the name fit the ears of her land. Well, Ember, Pepper, and Lark. Sounds like a hymn I'd listen to. Mara's laugh came easier. I'd like to hear it too. Over stew and biscuits that didn't need apologies, they made a plan with the slow gravity of people who respect consequences. Lark would register the foal to her brand in the morning, a legal measure that buys time if not finality. Mara would leave at first light for Silt Ridge, taking the wagon along the Cottonwood Road with its shady miles and fewer eyes. If Owen came, Lark would show him paper and spine in equal measure. He knows you? Mara asked. He knows I don't fold easy, Lark said, and that I talk calm until calm stops working. Night laid itself over the pasture. Pepper and Ember shifted into a circle of sleep with ears trading watch duty. Lark rolled extra blankets for Mara in the spare room that smelled of cedar and the faint sugar of old quilts. In her own room, Lark sat on the edge of the bed and took the note from her pocket again. Worth more than money. She thought of things that are water in August, a neighbor in January, a foal with stars in her feet, a woman deciding not to be hurt anymore. The wind nudged the eaves and left. Dawn carried the kind of blush that makes the day look new, even to tired eyes. Lark led Ember to the small pen to work on leading polite. The filly tried being lightning. Lark offered being earth. They reached a treaty. Mara hitched the wagon with quiet competence. When it was time, there were no speeches. Lark tucked biscuits and apples under the seat, pressed Mara's hand, and said, "When you get there, write that you did. I will." Mara looked once more at Ember. The foal lifted her head and blew a goodbye, small as a promise. The road received them without judgment. By 9, the courthouse in Dry Bluff opened its sleepy eyes. The clerk, whose haircut had been an afterthought of last spring, glanced at Lark over a ledger older than his knees. "Brand transfer for an unweaned filly?" he said, making the question sound like a challenge that had learned to shave. "Protective custody," Lark replied. "Temporary," he scratched his jaw. "Owner consent?" "Owner absent. Then we have a puzzle." Lark set Mara's note on the counter, folded to show the signature and not the pain. "The mare's gone. The husband's gone more. The foal is here." Papers like stories cleaner when someone else tells them. Lark used plain words and let the clerk decide how much ink needed to follow. He sighed the sigh of men who measure justice by columns and then stamped the document with a county seal that thunked like hope. 30 days provisional to your brand, he said. After that, somebody argues in front of a judge. I can argue. I expect so. She tucked the paper away, thanked him like gratitude could sweeten his tea, and stepped back into the brightness where her hat brim didn't have to carry more than sun. At the feed store, old Mrs. Hert took one look at Ember's halter, the lilac rope coiled over Lark's arm, and said, "That knot was tied by someone thinking of leaving and coming back." "Or leaving for good," Lark said. Mrs. Hert measured oats like a pastor measures hymns, generous where it matters, thrifty where it doesn't. "Watch for Owen," she added. "He's been riding this morning like a man late to his anger." "Anger was born early in him," Lark said. Mrs. Hart's eyes softened. "Then give him a late lesson." She found Ember asleep in the pen when she returned, knees folded like origami, chin on the dirt as if listening for a heartbeat in the earth. Pepper stood over her, tail fanning flies, eyes half closed in the proud boredom of guardians. Lark set to mending the south gate with the comfortable rhythm of wrench, wire, and curse words, soft enough not to harm seedlings. When the wind shifted, it carried a dust line from the east. One rider, big seat, hat like a threat. Lark's spine clocked the news before her eyes did. Owen Keene pulled up hard at the yard, horse sweating around foam bits, eyes rolled white with borrowed temper. He didn't dismount. He announced, "You've got my horse. I've got a filly whose mama is dead, whose halter carried a note, and whose safety now carries a seal," Lark said, voice level as a carpenter's measure. She held up the stamped paper. 30 days to sort friend from owner. Paper don't brand. He spat. It does today. His gaze slid to the pen, where Ember now stood behind Pepper, like a child behind a curtain. "That's mine." "She isn't," Lark said. "Not the way you mean." Owen swung down and took 3 heavy steps toward the fence. Lark stood where she was and let calm hold until it threatened to break, then spoke. "Think of what you gain by pausing. Money," he snapped, "is lost by pausing. Decency is too," Lark said. "And neighbors." He put a boot on the bottom rail, then glanced at Pepper's steady ears, at Ember's small, suspicious face, at Lark's unblinking. "You planning to fight me?" "I'm planning not to," Lark said. "But your plan decides mine." He wiped a sleeve across his mouth, leaving a mud of sweat and pride. "Mara run off?" To her sister. "She's got no right." "She has every right," Lark said, "to leave what hurts and keep what loves." He looked at the ground, as if it had betrayed his foot by holding him up. "She left me debts." "Pay them with the animals you broke for money," Lark said, "not with the one she mended for joy." A muscle in his jaw chose to stop arguing. 30 days, he muttered. "Then I come with the marshal." "Come with your best self," Lark said. "It'll be cheaper." He rode away in a storm that couldn't find rain. Lark breathed out what she'd been holding since the dust appeared. Ember stepped toward her with a tentative question in every line. "Is the world safe again?" Lark scratched the filly's neck and answered with a yes she meant to keep. Afternoon settled into its honest work. She dragged a salt block to the shade, fixed a hinge, wrote a letter to the Silt Ridge sheriff, explaining why a wagon might roll in with a woman who needed a door that locked on the right side. At dusk, a boy from Dry Bluff brought a note and a pie, the county's 2 currencies. The note was from Harrigan, the sheriff, whose patience had dents and polish both. "He's been at the bank," it read, "asking about liens, saying words like property and compensation. I'll be by tomorrow with papers of my own. Meanwhile, keep your temper in a drawer." Lark smiled and put both note and pie where they could do no harm. Ember learned the halter and lead in a circle that looked like forgiveness being practiced until it stuck. Night's chorus crickets, a far coyote. The windmill telling the moon what the day forgot kept time as Lark lay awake with that particular wakefulness that comes when you are responsible for something new and fragile. She thought of Mara's face opening at the sound of Ember's name. She thought of Owen's face closing at the sound of no. She thought of the seal's round indentation, of the hammer that made it, of the human need to press order into the soft clay of disagreement. Sleep found her eventually, and was gentle once it finally arrived. Morning brought Harrigan and his papers, Dusty his bay, Gelding looking apologetic on behalf of the entire office. "He's filed a claim," Harrigan said, "but he filed it sloppy." "Sloppy helps," Lark said. "Sloppy helps me," Harrigan corrected. "You it helps less. He'll get a hearing." "I'll bring a filly who knows her name and a woman who knows hers," Lark said. Harrigan pinched the bridge of his nose and looked at the horizon like it had something better to offer. "You always were a problem disguised as a solution," he said. "Opposite," Lark said, and meant it. They set a hearing for 2 Fridays, hence in Dry Bluff, enough days to let dust settle and tempers rehearse. In that span, Ember learned to follow a flag, pick up her feet, and accept the small indignities that make bigger safety. Pepper softened into a mentor who corrected gently and praised with presence. Lark wrote Mara twice and received one return by courier. Silt Ridge is softer than I feared. Sister says stay. I learn what stillness sounds like. A pressed lavender fell from the envelope and made the kitchen smell like a quiet decision. Owen didn't return until the day before the hearing. He rode slower this time, like a song he only half remembered. No yelling, just a long stare at Ember, who'd filled out in the hips, and the kind of alert that means a brain is taking root. She looks different, he managed. She acts different, Lark said. That's the point. He swallowed. You know how many posts I pulled in the sun to buy that horse? You know how many nights she braided hope to keep her? Lark asked, nodding toward the lilac rope above the peg. He looked at it and closed his eyes. The hearing was held in a room that used to sell buttons and now sold verdicts. A dozen people sat on chairs meant for smaller arguments. Owen's new lawyer, rented clean, with boots that had never met mud, spoke of property and precedent and the sacred nature of commerce. Lark spoke of care, intention, and a note that said, worth more than money. When the judge asked what, precisely, that could mean, she said, a living thing entrusted to a kinder future than its past. Ears tilted toward her, some to scoff, some to listen. Enough chose the latter. Harrigan entered the lilac rope into evidence like an artifact from a war they all pretended wasn't still being fought. Mrs. Hert testified about knots and leaving. The bank manager admitted Owen's debt ledger looked like a fence with too many gaps. Then the judge asked if the filly could be let in. Lark brought Ember to the doorway, sunlight pouring over her like a silent blessing. The judge, not unkind, just hungry for persuasion, stepped forward and held a hand. Ember sniffed, considered the world's newness, and touched her muzzle to his sleeve as if to say, proceed carefully. In the pause that followed, Owen's voice found a softer register. She comes when Mara whistles, he said unexpectedly. The room adjusted itself to the new shape of the air. Does she? The judge asked. She did, Owen said. Every time. Lark took a breath. Your Honor, a whistle is not a deed, but it is ownership of a kind. The judge looked at Owen. Would you sell her to your wife if she had coin? Owen stared at the floor. She ain't got coin. Then we trade something else, the judge said. We trade mercy. The ruling came like late rain. Provisional custody to Lark's brand for 6 months, during which time Mara Keene could petition for full transfer. Owen Keene to receive a small stipend from the county's stock relief fund, conditional on no contact that frightened horse or woman. All parties to behave as if they wished to be remembered kindly by their grandchildren. The gavel tapped. Paper, the same tool that had once threatened to take Ember, now held her in a safer hand. Outside, the town moved in ordinary rhythms, wheel, boot, bell. Owen stood with his hat twisted in both hands, until the shape forgot itself. Tell her, he said, not looking at Lark, that I won't come around. I will, Lark said. He cleared his throat. Tell her the lilac looks right on that rope. I will, she said again. He put his hat back on and left like a man trying to remember how to walk without his worst self leading. Weeks thinned into gentler weather. Ember learned softness and offered it back, which is the deal open hearts make with the world when given a chance. Pepper dozed in shade that looked stitched into the afternoon. Lark received a letter in Mara's careful hand. I am working at the milliner's, sewing roofs for ladies' heads. I send $1 with this and all the rest of my courage. Tell Ember my whistle is the same, even when the air is different here. Inside, a tiny ribbon of lilac. Lark tied it to the tackroom peg beside the old one. On a wind-steady evening, Lark leaned on the fence, while Ember pressed a young, warm head into her shoulder and breathed that grassy breath that turns people into home. The sun slid behind the cottonwoods and left a brass outline on everything that mattered. Worth more than money, Lark said to the air, which had the courtesy to agree. She imagined a spring morning 6 months from now, a road without fear, a whistle carried across it like a bridge. When she finally went inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and pie, and the wind at the eaves said nothing unkind.